I found a hidden camera in my 10-year-old son's toy robot. When I asked who gave it to him, he said, "Uncle Dave said it's our little secret." My blood ran cold. I checked the footage. What I saw made me call the police immediately. My name's Russell Kane. I'm 38 years old, divorced, and trying my best to be a good dad to my 10-year-old son, Landon. His mom, Melissa, and I split 3 years ago after I found out she was screwing around with some guy from work. The divorce was ugly. Not screaming matches in the courtroom ugly, but there were lawyers, custody battles, and a lot of bitterness. Melissa swore up and down that it wasn't about the guy, that our marriage had been dying for years, and she just made a mistake. But it's funny how she moved in with him 6 months later, right? That guy? David Wren. Uncle Dave to my son. I King hated him. Not just because he was him, but because he had this way of inserting himself into Landon's life like he'd been there all along. He was one of those guys who tried too hard, always grinning, always cracking jokes, acting like he was every kid's best friend. It made my skin crawl, but what was I supposed to do? Melissa had every right to date whoever she wanted. And as long as Landon was safe, I couldn't just barge in and tell her how to live her life. So I played nice. Bit my tongue. Let my kid talk about Uncle Dave without showing how much it pissed me off. But looking back, there were signs. Little things I brushed off. Like how Landon started spending more time in his room whenever he was at his mom's house. Or how he hesitated sometimes when I asked about his weekends. Or how one Friday night, he came home with a toy robot and told me, without a single shred of hesitation, "Uncle Dave said it's our little secret." I remember exactly where we were when he said it. In the kitchen, him sitting at the table, unzipping his backpack. He pulled out this little blue and gray robot, grinning from ear to ear. "Check this out, Dad. It moves." I took the toy from his hands, turning it over. It wasn't anything fancy, cheap plastic, red LED eyes that lit up when it rolled forward. Something about it bugged me, though. "Where'd you get this?" I asked. "Uncle Dave gave it to me," Landon said proudly. "He told me not to tell Mom, 'cause she'd be mad he bought me a gift. And not to tell you, 'cause you'd get jealous." My grip on the toy tightened. "He said that." "Yeah, but it's okay. It's just a toy." He reached out, pressing a button. The little thing jerked to life, rolling across the table with stiff, jerky movements. Landon laughed. "Cool, huh?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, bud. Super cool." But my stomach was in knots. That night, after Landon went to bed, I picked up the robot again. I couldn't explain why it bothered me so much. Maybe it was the secrecy of it. Maybe it was the fact that I just didn't trust David. Never had, never would. I turned it over, running my fingers along the plastic seams, and then I saw it. A tiny black dot just beneath the robot's chest panel. At first, I thought it was just a design thing, maybe a sensor for motion detection. But something about it made me pause. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and angled it over the dot. A lens. My breath hitched. A camera lens. I shot up from my seat, so fast my chair scraped against the floor. My heart started pounding in my ears. Why the FCK would a kid's toy have a hidden camera in it? Hands shaking, I grabbed my toolkit and started prying at the back panel. It took me a few minutes, but eventually, I popped it open. Inside, nestled between the cheap wiring and battery compartment, was a tiny micro SD card. My whole body went cold. I stood there, staring at the card like it was a loaded gun. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to check it. I wanted to be wrong. Needed to be wrong. I sat down, plugged the card into my laptop, and started going through the footage. At first, it was just normal, boring SHD, hours of Landon playing in his room, sitting at his desk, lying in bed scrolling on his tablet. But the camera had been recording constantly, for days. And then I saw him, David, standing in Landon's room while my son played on the floor, completely unaware. I clicked to another video. David, sitting on the edge of the bed, watching. Just watching. My stomach twisted into knots. My hands clenched into fists. I kept going, file after file, dreading what I might find. David standing in the doorway, while Landon was in the bathroom. David sitting too close, whispering something I couldn't hear. David brushing Landon's hair back, touching his cheek. It wasn't outright criminal, at least not in the footage I had, but it was enough to make my skin crawl. I slammed the laptop shut so hard I thought I cracked the screen. My hand was shaking so violently, I had to grip the edge of the table just to steady myself. And then I grabbed my phone. I called the cops. The next few hours were a blur. Police officers in my living room. Them taking the toy, my laptop, asking me 100 questions. Then came the hardest part, waking Landon up and asking him, as gently as I could, if David had ever done anything that made him uncomfortable. At first, he just looked confused. "Like what? Has he ever touched you?" Said, "Anything weird?" My voice cracked. Landon frowned, shook his head. "No, but he sometimes stares. A lot." That was enough for me. David was arrested the next day. And when they searched his home, they found more footage. Not just of Landon. Other kids. Melissa swore she had no idea. Maybe she was telling the truth. Maybe she just didn't want to know. But the court didn't care. She lost custody. Landon lives with me now, full-time. He still talks to his mom on the phone, but it's not the same. He doesn't ask about David. He doesn't even say his name. I don't think he ever will again. And me? I don't sleep much anymore. Because I keep thinking, what if I hadn't checked that toy? What if I had brushed off Landon's words as innocent? What if I hadn't been paying attention? God help me, I don't even want to imagine. The days after David's arrest were some of the worst of my life. You'd think I'd feel relief, knowing he was locked up, but I didn't. I felt rage. Deep, all-consuming rage that made my hands shake and my vision go red every time I closed my eyes. I kept thinking about the footage, the way he sat too close, the way he stared at my son, the way he touched his hair, his face. The sick FCK was grooming him. I wanted him dead. I wasn't proud of that thought, but it was the truth. I fantasized about it, about finding him before the cops did, about putting my hands around his throat and squeezing until his face turned blue. But I wasn't the only one who wanted blood. Melissa had a complete breakdown when she saw the evidence. She tried to call me after his arrest, sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. I didn't know, Russ. I swear to God, I didn't know. You let that piece of SHD around our son. I cut her off, my voice shaking with fury. You trusted him. You left my kid alone with him. Russell, please, I hung up. I didn't want her apologies. Didn't want her tears. I wanted answers. Because the more I thought about it, the more one question burned in my mind. How long? How long had she been with him before this started? How long had he been watching Landon? And Jesus F. King Christ. How many other kids were there? A few days later, I got a call from Detective Owen Mercer, the lead investigator on the case. We need you to come down to the station, he said. There's something you need to see. My stomach twisted. What is it? I'd rather show you in person. That was never a good sign. I told Landon I had to run an errand, left him with my neighbor, and drove to the station, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. When I got there, Mercer looked tired. Deep lines creased his face, his hair was messier than usual, and he had the kind of hollow-eyed stare that only came from seeing things you could never unsee. He motioned for me to follow him into a private room. I stepped inside and immediately noticed a laptop on the table. The same one I had given them. The one with the SD card. Mercer sat down, rubbing his temples. Before I show you this, I need you to understand something. What we found on David's personal computer, it's worse than we expected. I felt sick. Worse how? He hesitated, then sighed. There were folders. I swallowed hard. Folders. One for every kid. The room spun. I gripped the back of the chair to steady myself. Are you saying there were others? Mercer nodded grimly. At least 5 that we know of. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. F. King bastard. F. King monster. Russell, Mercer said gently. One of those folders had your son's name on it. My knees almost gave out. My voice cracked. I cleared my throat, trying to keep myself together. What was in it? Mercer opened the laptop and clicked on a folder labeled Landon K. Inside were dozens of video files. I forced myself to watch. It was footage from the robot. Some of it I had already seen. Landon playing in his room, sitting on his bed, completely unaware he was being recorded. But then Mercer clicked on a file I hadn't seen before. A recent one. It opened to a shot of Landon sleeping. The camera was positioned directly in front of his bed. The red LED eyes of the robot pulsed faintly in the dark. And then, suddenly, a figure moved into frame. My breath caught in my throat. David. He was standing over Landon's bed, just staring down at him. Not moving, not touching him, just watching. For over 5 minutes. A grown man, standing completely still in the dark, watching my son sleep. I shot up from my chair so fast it nearly tipped over. Turn it off, I rasped. Mercer clicked out of the video. I ran a hand down my face, trying to steady my breathing. We're charging him with everything we've got, Mercer said after a moment. Possession of child exploitation material, unlawful surveillance, endangerment, you name it. We've already contacted the parents of the other kids. And given what we found, he's looking at decades in prison. Decades wasn't enough. Decades meant he could still breathe. Mercer must have seen the look on my face because he sighed. I know this isn't the kind of justice you want, Russell. But trust me, he's done. His life is over. I didn't answer, because all I could think about was that video. The way David stood there in the dark, watching, waiting. What the FCK had he been waiting for? And how close had I come to losing my son? Landon didn't sleep in his own bed for weeks after that. Not that I blamed him. He had nightmares. Bad ones. The kind where he woke up screaming, drenched in sweat, his little hands shaking as he clung to me. I let him sleep in my bed, holding him tight and whispering over and over that he was safe, that no one was ever going to hurt him. that no one was ever going to touch him. But deep down, I didn't believe my own words. Because even though David was locked up, even though he'd never come near my son again, the damage was already done, and I didn't know if I'd ever be able to fix it. The nightmares didn't stop. Landon was never the type of kid to cry much, not even when he was younger. He'd scrape his knee, shake it off, get a bad grade, sigh, but move on. But now, he woke up in the middle of the night, screaming, "Dad, Dad, he's here," and clung to me like his life depended on it. I'd sit up with him, hold him close, rock him back and forth like I used to when he was a toddler. I'd tell him, "It's okay, buddy. It's okay. No one's going to hurt you." But no matter how many times I said it, he never seemed to believe me. And maybe that's because I didn't fully believe it either. David was locked up, yeah. He wasn't getting out anytime soon. But my son, my baby, had been preyed on by a monster right under my nose. And for how long? That was the question that kept me up at night. How long had David been watching him? How long had he been planning whatever sick SHD was going through his head? How close had I come to losing my son? I try to keep life normal. That's what the therapist said to do. Routine is important, she told me. Make sure he knows his world is still stable. So I did. I made his favorite breakfasts, pancakes with extra syrup, eggs, just the way he liked. I packed his lunch for school, walked him to the bus stop, told him stupid dad jokes to make him smile. But even when he smiled, even when he laughed, I saw the hesitation behind his eyes, the fear he was trying to hide. And then, about 2 weeks after David's arrest, I noticed something that broke me all over again. Landon wouldn't change his clothes unless the door was locked. Now, I know most 10-year-olds start getting more private, more self-conscious, but this was different. If I so much as walked past his room while he was changing, he'd go stiff, his little hands gripping the hem of his shirt like he was scared to take it off. I didn't say anything at first, just watched, observed. And then one night, after dinner, I decided to gently push. "Hey, bud," I said as we sat on the couch, a movie playing in the background. He glanced up from his tablet. "Yeah." I hesitated. I didn't want to push too hard. Didn't want to make things worse. But I needed to know, "You've been locking your door a lot lately." Landon's fingers tightened around his tablet. He didn't look up. "Yeah, that new." I asked, keeping my voice light. He shrugged. "I guess." I swallowed. "You know, you don't have to do that. No one's ever gonna—" "I know." He cut me off, suddenly defensive. His cheeks flushed, and he clenched his jaw like he was holding something back. "Landon," I said gently, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Did David touch you?" His eyes shot to mine, wide and panicked. "No." I searched his face, my stomach twisting. "Are you sure?" He shook his head quickly. He never did anything like that. He was just." His voice trailed off. He looked down, lips pressing into a thin line. "Just what?" I asked, my pulse hammering. Landon swallowed hard. His little fingers dug into the couch cushion. He watched me. He whispered. I felt sick. "Watch you how?" My voice was barely above a whisper. He bit his lip, hesitating. Then, finally, he mumbled, "When I changed. When I was in the bathroom. I always thought it was an accident, like maybe he just walked by, but then I started noticing he was always there." He looked up at me, his eyes glossy with tears he refused to let fall. And then the robot. I forced myself to stay calm, even though every muscle in my body screamed for violence. "The robot." Landon nodded, his breath hitching. Sometimes, I'd hear it move in the middle of the night. I thought maybe it was just a glitch. But then one time I was changing and I swear to God, Dad, I saw its eyes light up. He rubbed his arms, his voice dropping to a whisper. I thought I was going crazy. I clenched my fists, so hard my nails bit into my palms. "You weren't crazy," I said, barely able to keep my voice steady. Landon wiped at his nose. I thought if I just ignored it, it'd stop. But it never did. I took a shaky breath and pulled him into a hug. He melted into me, his small frame trembling. I want to tell him it was over, that he never had to worry again. But I didn't, because I wasn't sure if that was true. 2 days later, I got another call from Detective Mercer. "Russell," he said, his voice tight. "We found something else." I gripped the phone. "What now?" "We traced some of the footage back to an external server." I felt my stomach drop. "What the HLL does that mean?" Mercer hesitated. "It means David wasn't just collecting these videos for himself." A cold chill ran down my spine. He was sharing them. My grip on the phone turned to iron. "With who?" "We're still investigating," Mercer said. "But we found conversations on his devices, messages exchanged with other users, encrypted chat logs. Russell, there could be others involved in this." My skin crawled. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. "Are you telling me there's a F-King ring?" I spat. "It's looking that way," Mercer admitted. "We're bringing in digital forensics, but it's going to take time to decrypt everything. In the meantime, I need you to be extra cautious. Make sure Landon doesn't talk to anyone online. If you notice anything weird, strangers watching your house, unknown numbers texting or calling. Reported immediately. My blood ran cold. Why would anyone be watching my house? I demanded. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then Mercer sighed. Because, Russell, these people don't like loose ends. I didn't sleep that night. After hanging up with Mercer, I double-checked that every door and window in the house was locked. Then I went outside, walked the perimeter of my property, and scanned the street for anyone, that looked even remotely suspicious. Nothing. No strange cars. No figures lurking in the shadows. Just a quiet suburban neighborhood. The kind where people water their lawns and wave at each other from their driveways. But now it felt different. It felt wrong. Like something was watching me. I went back inside, locked the door behind me, and leaned against it, my heart hammering. Mercer's words echoed in my head. These people don't like loose ends. I forced myself to breathe. Think, Russell. Think. David was in custody. He couldn't hurt Landon anymore. But if Mercer was right, if there were others, then this wasn't just about one sick bastard. It was bigger, darker, and I had no idea how deep it went. The next morning, I kept Landon home from school. I told him he had a stomach bug and called the school to say he wouldn't be in. He didn't argue. He barely even questioned it. He just curled up on the couch with his tablet, eyes still heavy with exhaustion from another night of restless sleep. Meanwhile, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, scrolling through every piece of information I could find about cases like this. Online exploitation rings, surveillance networks, secret forums. The deeper I went, the worse it got. These weren't just isolated incidents. There were entire communities of people who traded and shared this kind of footage. People who used hidden cameras, smart toys, even hacked baby monitors to watch kids in their own homes. My stomach churned as I read. And then, as I was about to close the browser, something caught my eye. An article. Local father arrested in child exploitation case. I froze. The name in the headline wasn't David's. It was someone else. A man from a neighboring town. A father of two. He had been caught with footage just like the kind David had recorded. I clicked the link and skimmed the article. Then, about halfway through, I saw it. Authorities believe the suspect had ties to a larger online network, which is currently under investigation. A network. I stared at the screen, my pulse pounding. David wasn't just some lone predator. He was part of something bigger. That afternoon, Mercer called me again. Russell, he said, sounding more tense than usual. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. I gripped the phone. Yeah. Has anyone, contacted you since David's arrest? I frowned. No. Why? Mercer sighed heavily. Because we think someone's trying to clean up loose ends. A chill ran down my spine. What the HLL does that mean? It means some of the files we recovered from David's devices are missing. I felt my blood run cold. Missing how? Someone wiped them remotely. We have enough evidence to charge him, but we don't have everything. Someone else, someone on the outside, is covering tracks. I swallowed hard. Do you think they know about me? Another long pause. I don't know, Mercer admitted, but I need you to be careful. If anything feels off, call me. No hesitation. I exhaled shakily. Yeah, okay. And Russell, yeah. Keep your son close. That night, I slept with my gun under my pillow. I hadn't fired it in years, but I cleaned it, loaded it, and kept it within reach. Just in case. Because if someone did come for us, I wasn't going down without a fight. The next few days were HLL. I barely slept. Every time a car slowed down near my house, I tensed. Every time the doorbell rang, I reached for the gun. But nothing happened. No strange calls. No shadowy figures lurking outside. Just silence. Too much silence. Mercer had said someone was wiping files, covering tracks. That meant they knew. They knew David was caught. They knew the police had evidence. And worst of all, they knew about us. On the fourth day after Mercer's warning, something changed. Landon was in the living room, playing a game on his tablet, when he suddenly sat up straight. His face paled, his fingers clutching the device so tightly his knuckles turned white. Dad, he called, his voice small. I was in the kitchen, pouring coffee, but at the sound of his tone, I rushed over. What is it, buddy? He didn't answer, just turned his tablet around so I could see the screen. A message from an unknown number. Are you alone? We need to talk. I grabbed the tablet from his hands, my pulse hammering. How long have you had this? I demanded. Landon swallowed. It had just popped up. I forced myself to stay calm. Have you ever seen messages like this before? He hesitated. Then, slowly he nodded. A couple times. On my games. I felt like I was going to be sick. This wasn't just some random sicko lurking in the dark corners of the internet. This was organized. They were reaching out, testing him. And I had no doubt in my mind this was connected to David. I took Landon's tablet, drove straight to the police station, and slammed it down on Mercer's desk. Tell me you can trace this. Mercer picked it up, his brows knitting together as he read the message. Damn, he muttered. This is bad. No, SHD. I snapped. Can you trace it? He sighed. We can try, but these people use VPNs, rerouted IP addresses. It won't be easy. I clench my fists. Then we do something else. We bait them. Mercer looked up at me, skeptical. What are you thinking? I exhaled. We reply. His eyebrows shot up. No way, he said. Absolutely not. That's dangerous as HLL. It's the only way to draw them out, I argued. They think they still have control. They think my kid is weak, scared. We use that. We make them slip up. Mercer hesitated, considering. Finally, he nodded. Okay, but we do it my way. That night, we set the trap. Under Mercer's supervision, we sent a reply. Who is this? A few minutes later, another message came through. A friend. We know what happened. We can help. My skin crawled. Help how? I typed back. The response was almost instant. We can make this all go away. I turned to Mercer. They're scared. He nodded. Looks like it. I cracked my knuckles. Then let's push. We sent a final message. Let's meet. Mercer and his team set up the sting operation. They traced the response, pinpointing a general area where the signal was coming from, a seedy cafe on the outskirts of town, known for catering to people who didn't want to be found. Undercover officers staked out the location, watching. And then, after 2 days of silence, someone took the bait. A man, mid-40s, dressed casually, but something about him was off. Too careful, too aware. He sat down at a corner table and pulled out a phone, the same number that had been texting Landon. Mercer's team moved in fast. They arrested him on the spot. Turned out, the guy was just a middleman. But he was scared, really scared. And when pressured, he gave up everything. Names, locations, online forums, a whole network of people who thought they were untouchable. Within weeks, arrests were being made across multiple states. Hard drives were confiscated. Entire dark web servers were shut down. And David? David had been small time compared to these bastards. He was just one cog in a much bigger machine. But now, that machine was breaking apart. The day Mercer told me the operation was officially a success, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Relief. The monsters were gone. Landon was safe. I was finally free of the rage, the fear, the constant gut-churning anxiety. That night, I tucked my son into bed and kissed his forehead. You're okay now, I whispered. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I actually believed it. Landon is thriving. The nightmares are fewer. The locked doors are still a habit, but he's smiling again. As for Melissa, she's still struggling with the guilt. But she's trying. She's in therapy, working on herself. And me? I still check the doors. Still scan the streets. But the rage isn't all-consuming anymore. Because I won. Not with violence. Not with blood. But by destroying the people who thought they could get away with hurting my son. And that was the best revenge I could ever ask for.